What are some NSFW history facts that do not get taught in schools? Story 1. In Frank's diary talked a lot about masturbation, but most of it was edited out. I wouldn't want to read that. It'd take me out of my comfort zone. You need a priest. Story 2. John F. Kennedy was dating Ms. Denmark in the 1940s, and when they stayed at Sumter House in Charleston, the FBI bugged their room because they thought she may be a Nazi spy. Turns out they didn't hear a lot of conversation, but instead a lot of NSFW time. Tapes are in the Library of Congress for those interested. Wow, just looked her up. The reason the FBI thought she was a Nazi spy was that she was Adolf Hitler's companion during the 1936 Summer Olympics. You mean to say Hitler and JFK were Eskimo brothers? Story 3. French President Felix Faure died getting a from his mistress. He had a petite mort, followed by a grand mort. He came, then he went. Oscar de la Wanger, leader of the infamous 36th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. Oscar and his men were so vile and evil that even the SS had an ongoing investigation on the group. They are times pet children, burn them alive or feed them still alive to starved dogs. There was a particular massacre of 500 school children that stood out to me. This is an account of that event. After the roar of the building was blown off, we saw a daycare full of small children, around 500, all with small hands in the air. Even Wanger's own people called him a butcher. He ordered to kill them all. The shots were fired, but he requested his men to save the ammo and finish them off by rifle butts and bayonets. Blood and brain matter flowed in streams down the stairs. You know, your ref times fed in the head when even the SS is saying, dude, WDF, that's how ISIS happened. There were Al-Qaeda rejects that were crazy even by their standards. Edit. Plenty of people are telling me I'm wrong, but failed to read my other responses. Obviously, I was oversimplifying it at first. Story 5. I actually didn't know until recently, but the core of Discovery only moved to meat and had incredible constipation. One day they all would tap bills. They named thunderclap pears, which made them crap out everything immediately, but the pills had a bit of metal in them. So if you go out on the same trail as the core of Discovery with a metal detector, you can find the exact place Lewis Clark and the rest of the core took the biggest craps of their lives. Edit. My top comment is now about the biggest literal crap storm in history. Thanks, guys. Do they still sell those? Asking for a friend. Just get yourself some sugar-free gummy bears. Story 6. Thomas Granger was the first juvenile to be executed in what would become the USA. He was convicted of buggery with the mare, a cow, 2 goats, several sheep, 2 calves, and a turkey, and hung in September 1642. Edit. Thank you everyone for educating me about the difference between hung and hanged. I'll never get the image of her spewing out of my head now. Edit the second. Gilded for talking about animal buggery. What a world we live in. Buggery and times L intercourse. You're welcome. I did the legwork for you. Is this not a commonly used word in the US? In the UK, I feel like a lot of people know what this means, though. Here, bugger is a common expression of dismay akin to shouting crap when you drop something, etc. On a completely unrelated note about buggery, I once had a Japanese girlfriend who came around for dinner with my family. My mom asked, "Is Japanese a safe country to live in?" To which my ex replied, "Yeah, it's pretty safe, except for buggery." She had meant to say burglary. My parents were struggling to keep a straight face, and then everyone lost it when my mom turns around and says, "Oh, it's still illegal there, is it?" Story 7. In addition to all the other hijinks Columbus got up to, in later years he ran an times ex-slave business from the New World. He remarked in a letter to a friend that 9-year-old girls were a particularly hot item with the nobility of Europe. Another reason that guy was an F-times kfing asshole. He even gave girls out to his officers as rewards. Here is what one wrote about. Well, I was in the boat. I captured a very beautiful Carib woman who said the Lord, Admiral Columbus, gave to me, and with whom have taken her into my cabin. She being naked, according to their custom, I conceived desire to take pleasure. I wanted to put my desire into execution, but she did not want it, and treated me with her fingernail in such a manner that I wished I had never begun. But seeing that, to tell you the end of it all, I took a rope and thrashed her well, for which she raised such unheard of screams that you would not have believed your ears. Finally, We came to an agreement in such manner that I can tell you that she seemed to have been brought up in a school of times res, and Columbus wrote in 1500, 100 castellanos are as easily obtained for a woman as for a farm, and it is very general, and there are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 are now in demand. And remember that he was not even tasked with enslaving the locals, but to befriend them. Story 8. The Welsh would often go to England to steal sheep. This was punishable by death. So when they were caught, they would say that they went there to F times the sheep, which was not punishable by death. And now, after 20 goddamn years on this planet, I finally find out why the Welsh are sheep shaggers. They just say they were stealing them. Now to try to diminish the bad reputation. Story 9. Peter the Great scoured the Russian Empire in search of dwarfs and giants in an effort to breed a race of each. While he couldn't find enough giants, he found many dwarves. He would bake a huge pie and have a dwarf get naked and wait inside it to jump out and scare guests, in addition to using them as regular stewards and servants and such. This was the tip of Peter's crazy. He also liked dentistry so much, he would make courtiers let him pull their healthy teeth. Then he would label them and put them in a display case. He had a museum of birth defects, mostly the bodies of defunct babies killed by their parents at birth. The curator of his museum was a giant. After the giant died, Peter put his body in the museum. He thought coffins were so cool that he made them for fun and illegalized burying people in bags as Russians had done. In short, Peter the Great is one of my favorite historical figures. Story 10. John Harvey Kellogg, one of the Kellogg brothers who invented breakfast cereal, advocated for sewing silver wire through boys' foreskin to prevent them from wanking. Strange fellow. Cornflakes were developed to lower men's libidos when eaten. Edit. This is going to be a till tomorrow. Is that why they put a big old C on the box? To taunt us. Story 11. Everyone say hi to the BuzzFeed interns taking notes. Notes, you assume too much. Control plus C. Story 12. When Marie Antoinette was imprisoned by the French citizens, they took her kids. Then they had her oldest son times fed by prostitutes so that he would contract their STDs. They then tried to use this as grounds to try her for abusing her children. The accusations went nowhere, so the POCID was given a ton of venereal diseases for nothing. Edit. Spell Marie Antoinette's name wrong. Edit 2. Holy F times. So many upvotes. Also, to those who are asking my source, I read it on Wikipedia. Went back to try and get a more detailed source. Wikipedia source was Nagel. Susan 2009. Mary Therese, The Fate of Marie Antoinette's Daughter. London Bloomsbury Publishing, page 137, ISBN 9780747596660. Hope this helps anybody who is curious. The accusations went nowhere. Weren't the revolutionary courts kangaroo bullcrap anyway? Yes, that's how pathetic their attempts were. A court that would have found her guilty of poisoning the air by breathing found such accusations baseless. Story 13. JFK cheated on his wife and was a super S times X addict. Dude, F times a lot of women, even saying if he doesn't have, you know what, 3 times a day he gets headaches, and he had a hell of a pickup line. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for the president of your country. Story 14. The ancient Greeks were super gay. I mean, really mega super gay. A history teacher said calling them gay is inaccurate. They were omnisexual. Men, women, goats, plants, if the mood struck them, and minerals when there wasn't anything else around. This is correct. I don't know about non-human, so I am doubtful of that. But they didn't have a concept for gay. The only thing they really expected was that you eventually had kids, so your family did not die out. Edit. They were also okay with pederasty. A fun fact being that Achilles and Patroclus from the Iliad had this type of relationship. We see this in the fragments of the play Myrmidons. Story 15. The US had a eugenics program into the 70s that sterilized thousands of women, mostly black/po. They would often do this under the guise of an emergency appendectomy post-birth. A woman gave birth to a baby and didn't know why. She could never have children after she was able to receive damages. Look up Buck v. Bell. Edit. And from others reminders, Native American women were targeted too. Unsurprisingly, aside from targeting groups, women deemed mentally unfit, ill, morally inferior or too low of IQ were included in this. I was born on a colony that was pretty much a government eugenics program in Canada. The government took the 100 best male students from the Indian industrial schools and the 100 best females from the Indian residential schools, arranged the marriages, and then tried to teach them to farmers. While many of the couples ended up very successful farmers, they were not allowed to sell their crops or livestock. Everything had to go through an Indian agent. The vast majority of the time, a lot of the crops rotted in storage, as the Indian agent at the time, his name was Graham, didn't really care that the program was successful, only that the Indians were contained. If you're wondering, it was called the File Hills Indian Farming Colony Experiment. I actually have pictures from that time period somewhere during a sports day of some sorts, with a large banner reading, "The Queen Mother loves her red children." FYI, my great-grandparents were numbers F100 and M100, the 100th arranged marriage. Story 16. Johnny Appleseed didn't go around planting apple seeds just because. He sold the trees to settlers, and they used the apples to make booze. Tasty apples are a mutation, and apple trees used to make edible. Apples don't come from seeds. They come from grafting other tasty apple trees. If I remember right, the taste of an apple is purely random. No relation to the apple that spawned it. Only surefire way is the grafting. Every seed in an apple will grow a tree with a different kind of apple. Apples are cloned so that the flavor stays the same.